Socrates, a prominent philosopher universally revered throughout the history of humanity. He is often placed in juxtaposition with Jesus and Buddha for his breadth of knowledge and abundance of legacies that continue to influence the very fabric of our society to this day. Despite his share of wisdom enlightening the inception of art, literature, and even democracy in ancient Athens, Socrates suffered a tragic and unjust death, which is ironically caused by democratic votes. Twice in a row, if I might add, with overwhelming consensus rendering his demise inescapable. The charges against him were impiety and corrupting the young, which he refuted both with vigor and satire over the exchange of arguments with the courts. First, impiety, desecration of the Greek gods. To understand the severity of this accusation, it is crucial to realize that the Greek mythologies back in the day were equivalent of the nowadays compulsory education system. Almighty figures such as Zeus and Athena were textbook essentials comparably parallel to the 9th grade math and English subjects. The key point is, the veneration for gods were deeply embedded into the everyday life of Athens, shaping the social and cultural values of the state, as well as the mentalities of the average Athenians. Whereas Socrates, on the other hand, advocates for philosophy over God, that is, pursuing knowledge and happiness by human endeavors in redefining the purpose of life, as opposed to standing idly by divine interventions. Thus, his ideologies were largely taken offensive to common sense and considered a heathen, which consequently earned him the transgression of godlessness. Second, corrupting the young. This particular conviction was a projection of public resentment towards two of Socrates' apostles, which one allegedly aided the enemy of Athens, Sparta, and the other served under tyranny, executing democratic citizens. In addition to his apostles' betrayal and cruelty laid upon the state, contempt on divinities exacerbated the public outrage against Socrates that eventually led to his two trials of condemnations. The first trial cast a vote of 280 versus 220 in favor of conviction, providing a 1 in 3 option of punishments, which were incarceration, exile, and a trivial fine. Socrates, nonetheless, settled with none of them, and performed overpowering battles in defending his innocence, and even proclaimed himself a God-sent present to the Athenian people. Infuriated by his acts of arrogance, the court trumped up a second trial, with an overwhelming verdict of 361 versus 140 in favor of death, and sealed Socrates' fate for good. Prior to Socrates' departure, his students instigated a prison break to help their beloved mentor escape, but the sage kindly declined upon the following arguments. First, political obligations. Born Athenian and die Athenian, Socrates honored himself a child of Athens, and hence obliged to abide by her decree, including the acceptance of capital punishment. Second, legal obligations. Breaking free the imprisonment for the sake of innocence jeopardized the principles of fair game to other law-abiding citizens. In another word, Socrates disdained cheating as an illegal conduct. Third, contractual obligations. The entitlement of citizenship forms binding contracts between states and citizens. For breach of such contracts, such as deserting court sentences, constitutes illegal conducts, which are repugnant to his philosophical teachings. Nonetheless, it is important to capture Socrates' interpretations of the Athenian democracy from the three arguments of his. The key takeaway is, decisions made by vox populi and the democratic system are often irrational and sentimental. Socrates acknowledges the inherent flaw of the system, that is, majority decision-making, which sometimes could bring about collective rulings that are neither ethically acceptable nor retrospectively justifiable. But, as long as the process complies with the corresponding laws and evidenced by logical arguments. It is, then, deemed successfully fulfilling the legalities of democracy. This is why, on the other hand, Socrates hates democracy, as it ignores the input of minorities, and more importantly, the voters of minimal educations can be easily swayed by popular culture and prevalent sentiments, which would eventually undermine the rationality of the verdict. Notably how Socrates held no delusions regarding human ethics or moral standards, even under a democratic system, as his entire lifespan was consumed with observing the nature of humanity in concluding the purpose of life, and his tragic and satirical finale echoed his lifelong adage. We really don't know that we know nothing.